Welcome back to Ryan Dunstan Podcast, Words from a Humble King. Per usual, I have a guest here with me. Now, before I say this gentleman's name, I want to present him in a certain manner because he's done a lot of great work and a lot of purpose, mission, and impact has come from his mind. And I'm telling you, man, it's something that I truly appreciated it from afar. But now that I got a chance to kind of get close on it and get another set of eyes, I'm truly starting to begin to understand the impact of this king. Principal attorney, the Saber Firm, the LLC, business, sports, and entertainment law, and estate planning. And as an executive director for Kazi, Wahenga, I got that right, a Maryland-based nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing, and empowering people of African descent, and developed and coordinated programs which included African Birthright Tour, all right, the Swahili language courses, Knowing Your Rights classes and criminal expungement clinics, and leadership conferences, has served on the board of directors for the Tubman House and the community organizations focusing on community development and re-entry for persons formerly incarcerated in Baltimore, Maryland. That's dope. Right? Been interviewed by several media outlets such as ABC, Fox, and Intercept regarding some social engagements and uplifting and empowering the Black community. Dope. He has this sense of no man left behind that just kind of drives his mission. And in 2017, he delivered a keynote speech on leadership in Africa at the Great Lakes Peace Center conference held in Uganda. And in 2018, he presented, he was presented before several universities in Ghana for internship, Pan-Africanism, and ownership of resources through LEC Group. In 2022, he presented on the impact of the U.S. racial discrimination before the United Nations, Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. He's a filmmaker, 2018. Men Impact Changes in 2020 and 2021, Washington Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division Rising Star and Best Committee Chair Awards, respectively, right? And then born and raised in Prince George's County, right here from our very own DMV. Man, this guy has truly loved without asking for a thing back. This is Mr. Taalib Saber.
That's right.
I want to first of all thank you for everything that you've been doing. Right? Thank you for pushing for reasons that some other folks might not understand, and I think that's kind of what I want to get into. And I'm gonna just start right off with this because this was a mouthful. But what is your why?
Why? So yeah, that when you said that, I was like, dang, that dude kind of dope.
You're right. When we're in the fight, we don't always realize the impact we're having, right? But it's fueled by something, and whys, I've always, you guys, know it. I talk about this all the time. Whys have power.
For sure.
What's your why?
My why is to be able to make an impact on my community and my people. Like I really am someone who just has a fervent desire to advance the liberation movement of my people. And it just so happens that I have different methods in order to do it, or different platforms. So it could be as a lawyer, it could be as a filmmaker, it could be as, just an activist or organizer, or just a son, a friend, just whatever my manifestation is at that point in time. I think that's what drives my why. That is my why. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I met this guy 5 years ago.
I think so, yeah.
5 years ago, right before the pandemic. And when I met him, I didn't quite know, what we were walking into, what I was doing, but it felt right. And, and when we got there, I remember, soon after that meeting, we went down to DC to kind of sit in on one of your panels. And I remember, man, looking around the room and just kind of seeing everyone look toward your perspective, and we live in such uncertain times, man, so much ambiguity going on around us, right? And it's producing a lot of anxious feelings and movements and, and it's sparking a lot of discontentment amongst our communities, and but I just kind of saw people looking toward you to hear from you because they trusted your perspective. And that doesn't come from nowhere. And I know for a fact, because I've had my own route, you can't get to that without going through some things.
Oh, for sure. Like that, I think that I give thanks to my family for the grounding, you know what I'm saying? Because everybody out here doesn't have that, and I've always had like a village mentality when it came to a lot of things, and even with regards to my upbringing, because I come from a big family, my parents. So like that has always been instilled in me, and it only became more enhanced when I began to go on my own journey, right? And I remember from probably I was what 5 or 6. I was young when the O.J. Simpson trial happened, and that shaped my perspective as to being an attorney. And I was in law undergrad at Morgan State, and I was preparing for my LSAT, right? And at the time, in order to get into law school, you needed recommendations and stuff like that. So I already had the recommendation letters that I needed, but I wanted to get an extra one just to be sure. And there was a certain professor at Morgan State that I asked for this recommendation letter. And he was like, well, he told me that he didn't have time to do it. I'm like, okay, it's whatever. So me and a friend of mine went into his office, but I sat outside and this friend was inside talking to him. And I remember him saying, overhearing something to the effect of like, I've seen this brother's LSAT scores. I can't co-sign for this or put my name, all this and that. He's talking kind of greasy, right? So I remember leaving feeling a bit dejected about that. But at the same time, it definitely fueled my fire to be able to say, all right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to, I'm going to kill it. And sure enough, went to law school, got admitted to North Carolina Central University School of Law.
Shout
all right,
out.
legal Eagles.
Shout out.
Right. So, and I remember when I was there, like what really changed my perspective on just how I maneuver overall was the transition of my grandfather. Because my first year, second semester of law school, right before midterms, he ended up transitioning while we were en route to go see him because he had prostate cancer or pancreatic cancer, I believe. And right before he transitioned, I had a conversation with him about 2 offers that I had. One to go to South Africa for an internship as well as take human rights classes, and then another one to go to Congress to intern on the Hill. And the way his face lit up about South Africa, I'm like, all right, that's the route to go. That's where I need to go. And that completely changed my perspective. Being able to see people who look like me. That was the first time I was out the country. And seeing people who look like me. I'm on the motherland. I didn't know anybody on the trip at the time. We went as I was the only one from Central that went from law school. The other law schools, there was a lot of Howard students, and then also some mixture of other students from different law schools. But that whole experience for me was so eye-opening on like my history, culture, pride within all of that knowledge and understanding about the law, international law, coupled with just law here in the United States, and my identity, if you would. I always knew that I would be a passionate person or someone who helps community, but in the manner in which I did it wasn't defined. So like that helped to define exactly what it is, and I felt comfortable ever since. So I think that helped to shape exactly who I am now, and that whole journey from undergrad to present was what I had to go through in order to get to where I am now and where I'm going.
Yeah. It's I've had I had a little bit of a late sprout. I remember meeting you about 5-6 years ago, but I didn't, like you said, I didn't know how I was going to be or do what I was going to do. Right. I didn't even really know what I was going to look like, or what I was going to exuberate at that point. It's just I just felt something when I met you. Right.
Yeah.
And it was an appreciation of the energy that you brought to the table, the way you spoke, your demeanor, and there was a calm about you, but there was a confidence in you. And if there was, any insecurities or if there was any doubt in yourself, you did not let it shine. right? You were sure enough grounded in everything that you were headed toward. And that's the way I wanted to be, right? And I appreciated that, because we don't have to have the same route in order for me to be able to be inspired by you.
Facts. Yeah.
And then I soon met Gene, right? And that's when I started at, I had already started with Gene at that time. But, I got a chance to really work right under Gene here in the last 3 years, which has been pretty cool for me. And it's kind of defined what I want to do and where I'm going to see myself here in the near future, right? And I had a chance to kind of have Gene on, my mentor, on this podcast, which was dope. But you spoke to me about how your mentor kind of, and your uncle, right, kind of, formed your route a little bit.
Yeah.
You went to Africa. What was that experience like?
Phenomenal. I always equated to like how, so I heard it best, and I think it's so true. Like how white folks feel about the United States, just generally, is like the comfortability that I felt being on a continent, right? Because I've never been in a space and in a place where it was so many of people who looked like me, my people, that were around me. Of course, I'm from Prince George's County, DC's right there, Baltimore's here. So like, yes, but in terms of just from like the presidency down to whatever job existed, you see nothing but like blackness, right? So in the totality of blackness, there's a certain sense of like manhood that you saw while you're on the continent as well. And it was so empowering for me to be able to experience that at the age, because I was in my mid-20s. So like at that time, it was so just refreshing to really see and and also debunk a lot of the myths, because we hear so much about Africa and like how it is, how dilapidated it is, how ritualistic it is, like any negative stereotype you can think of. It was good to be able to see how those things actually did not exist, the way that it's portrayed in the West. And being able to go to South Africa, Ghana, Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, and some others, like that really helped to give me a much clearer perspective, because it wasn't just one country I went to and I could say, oh, this is my experience. Like, no, I've been to the West, I've been to the East, I've been to the South. Only other place I got to go to is North and Central. But it helped to really solidify my identity and have some pride about it. Because I think we as African people here, African Americans, have a tendency to shy away from that just because of the negative stereotypes about it, and how we didn't know anything prior to us getting saved, or, we never created anything. The highest that we've ever been was President Obama, and things like that. And this is modernly, where we were running whole empires and building whole pyramids and just so many different things. Great Zimbabwe, I go on and on, but there's so many different things we've done collectively as a people that, and not just here, but around the world, because we traveled too, that it instilled like that pride of like, oh, okay, so I can say that we did this, so I'm a part of this, so this is my lineage or my heritage, and that was just so fulfilling to be able to have a piece of that. Because I think a lot of us may feel a bit lost in that we don't know directly what our ancestry is. I did test, so I kind of know, but like, in all of that. Yeah, so
we've been talking about this too. Yeah, I got to do that
for sure. But like, there's a part of us that always kind of feels like that a bit. And I felt like my excursions to the continent, and not just that, because I didn't go just as a tourist. You know what I'm saying? When I travel, I go to where the locals are. I'm amongst the people. Some of my closest brothers now, are directly on a continent, living there, born there, all of that. And having those experiences really do help you to have grounding. And then it also helps you to connect, see like the similarities. Jambalaya here versus jollof there. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that you may consume greens here versus there. Like there are a lot of similarities with a lot of dishes. And that's just like culinary wise, there's so many other layers to it, and just how we may engage or interact with people, how we welcome people, how we may go about doing certain chores, how parents parent,
Right. Right.
that just is so many similarities that I think we focused on that. And one of my mentors actually told me this, like me, I identify as a Pan-African, so like as Pan-Africanists, we look at the similarities and not the differences. That's what we focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helped to instill the confidence that you may see, in addition to with my parents, growing up. But like that really helped to instill the confidence and the unapologetic nature of how I operate and move.
Mm-hmm. Mm. You know, you said something a while back, well, not a while back, but you said something there because we were talking on camera.
Yeah.
I mean, off camera before, and this wasn't prepping. We weren't prepping for the conversation, but there's such genuine insight in your experiences, and we were talking about the westernized concept of time.
Yes.
And because we were talking about grinding, the westernized understanding of grinding, and we were saying how all those things are not necessarily what we thought they were, and especially from a standpoint in time, because the way time is kind of recognized here, it's not recognized there.
Right.
But although we do in some ways resonate with how it is recognized there unknowingly, but then we get deemed as, or we demonize it here because of we're just simply being our rooted selves.
Right.
And I was a bit late, I'll confess, and I know if my wife is watching this, she's gonna say this, but I'm always late, right? And I was 8 minutes late here, and I always have some sort of excuse as to why, right? And I don't mean for it to be that way, right? And I really wanted to respect your time.
Yeah.
So I was kind of feeling bummed out about it because, I was kind of like, man, here it is. We were supposed to meet at a certain time, and I was, of course you had something going on and we changed the time, but then I wanted to kind of be able to increase, switch it back.
Yeah.
To be late was just kind of eating at me. So I'm anxious, trying to figure out like, man, how am I gonna get it all done by the time I get there, type of a deal. And when I get here, man, you turn me around with this perspective on how other countries or other areas in the world view time.
Yeah.
Touch on that for a second, because I don't even want to mess up what we talked about.
Yeah, we were this concept of time, and how I think it was Dr. Joy DeGruy Leary who mentioned using a westernized clock anywhere else in the world, right, outside of the West. And we get caught up, like you said, on like the linear time, which is okay, we say 4:00 and we need to be there at 4:00, or we say 11:00, we need to be there at 11:00. Whereas, and I think Dr. Jeremiah Wright actually spoke on it, we as an African people focus on, or like operate in Kairos time, which is more so like opportunity. So the best way to kind of describe it is an example Dr. Joy DeGruy gave, where say there's an event and the event is at 7:00. All right, and it's supposed to start at 7. We're throwing it, and we get there to the event. We don't just go sit down. You see somebody, and go, oh hey, what's up? How you doing? How you been? I haven't seen you in a while.
Right.
Da da da. If it's food there, let me get some food. Get myself situated and settled. Give me something to drink. You know what I'm saying? Make my round, say hello, and then you sit down. By the time you do all that, it might just be 7:20. Possibly 7:30. Who knows? And I think well, not I think, I've seen that's how generally we operate, around the world. Is like that opportune time. We're not rushing time, because time, is like a continuum. So we'll show up when it's time to show up. We'll be there when it's time to be there. And I think in the West, it does get demonized and is looked at as, not respecting time and things like that. And there's a certain part of us that has to merge the two, because we are in the West, but we are, not necessarily of the West. So you have to merge it. But at the same time, we get anxious and we overanalyze, overthink, or even are too critical on ourselves about it.
Right.
Because I think culture, we may be out of culture when thinking about it, or as we're interacting with people. Whereas in the culture, we understand and we make jokes about it, like, oh, you know, don't be late, da da da. But it's nothing to where it's to be offensive per se. It's just like that's what we do. So when you go abroad, you see that. You know, they may tell you it may start with something like time and like, oh, okay, well, you know, we're going to get started at this time and don't get started to maybe half an hour to an hour later. And then it can expand to in the concept of when I was walking in several places. I'm even thinking about maybe Costa Rica, so Central America, not only in Africa, but I will go to places and I ask them where such and such. They'll be like, oh yeah, it's just there. Well, what is just there? Like it's just there, like here, like how long, you know?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's just there. Just there could literally be 30 minutes after, like keep walking 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it's just there. You know, but it's not something where I'm like, oh, they told me that it's just there.
And now
You
got
know,
lost.
exactly. No, so, and I think that here, because we live in this rat race in the United States and in the West generally, and we're so focused on outcomes instead of appreciating the process of just being able to go through what it is that we're going through and taking and learning from that, that it kind of convolutes like how we view things and the importance of certain stuff. So I'm not saying this to say that you just going to show up late and just say, well, I'm late because I'm operating on Carol's time. You end up fired because of that. But I'm saying that culturally we operate from a perspective of really, you know, appreciating the company of other people and being able to not hurry. You want to enjoy the process. You don't need to like hurry and just because you're just doing it just to do it. You want to appreciate the whole process of it.
Yeah, and that's speaking to this term you just mentioned, the totality of our blackness.
Yeah.
Not knowing that we're operating in our indigenous formatting, but also operating in our indigenous formatting. And in some cases, we don't apologize for it, but in some cases, we do. It actually sparks how we feel, and then that'll actually shape the actual engagement, right? The meeting. But so you're uncle, you're in Africa, this is the molding of your perspective. You know, you're starting to truly understand the appreciation of your journey. You're starting to be rooted a bit here, and you're starting to understand things on a different level. And in all of that, you're going through some changes too inwardly, right? And, you know, one of the things I pride myself on in this podcast is talking about the stuff that matters, the things that make us tick, right? Because a lot of times we're going through things, and because our society, our culture won't allow us to actually go through what we're going through, we're judged for it, whatever the case may be, we start to form ourselves out of all of that. And you really can't be anything unless you express yourself, right? Sometimes a lot of greatness comes from your misery, right? A lot of purpose comes from your pain. And if you're not going to express yourself, you're not going to find some of the gifts that are in your suffering, that are in your emotional roller coasters, right? Talk to me about how you've been able to kind of get from an immature state and then the emotions that kind of morphed you into a more mature state, but then embracing them, because we like I said, we had a conversation off tape, and you know, and this wasn't the route I wanted to take with this conversation, but because it was so pure in the manner in which we were discussing it, and it was so organic, I felt like this was, you know, golden kind of content for other people to kind of understand the inner workings of great minds, right? Because you said something to me. You said the body keeps score even when we don't. And I fear that a lot of men, we or maybe just our culture in general, we deny anxieties, right? We deny how we may be feeling, right? We deny our sadness, right? We take on especially men, we take on this understanding, or this I don't know what you want to call it, but we take on anger, and then we make it who we are, as opposed to separating it and actually processing it and working through it. Because in other areas of our globe, man, it's not hustle and bustle like it is here. It's not grind, like you were saying a little earlier on. You know, the grinding thing. You made an analogy about how grinding the brakes on a rotor and how the erosion of the pad is us and the body keeping score, right? And how our body will begin to react on us, even though it's happening beneath our awareness.
Yeah.
Speak to the journey a little bit, man, as you come from Africa back here, and then you grow though, and you're going through these emotional roller coasters. I'm pretty sure you felt a certain kind of way when you kind of learned some of the things you learned there,
Oh, for sure.
compared it to here,
Yeah.
and decided not to get angry but do something about it. Speak to all of that.
For sure. Like I think what helped to bridge that was also a mentorship, because you can have the information, but when you don't have any type, it's like having a gun, right? You can have a gun, but if you don't know how to hold it properly, if you don't know how to load it properly, if you don't know how to shoot it properly, then it can end up in a world of hurt, and it can do more damage to you than good. And for me, I had like a couple of mentors that really helped to shape, who I am. Brother Eddie Conway, peace be upon him, original Black Panther Party here in Baltimore. He helped to shape, him and Sister Dominique, his wife, helped to shape my perspective just on how to navigate, like what your purpose is and what your goals should be to help the community out, and how to maneuver and go through that. I think they were pretty instrumental in that, and me being a part of the Tubman House and organizing in the community, not feeling like, even though I was never arrogant to the fact of like, okay, I'm a lawyer and then I'm doing this work type. It's more so of how can I use my skill set as a lawyer to contribute to the my community. So that was one. I would say another one was Professor Irvin Joyner, my professor at Central. Shout out to him, definitely, because I've had several closed door conversations with him when I got back from Africa. I think it was from both Ghana and South Africa. Those are two countries I went to when I was in law school. But we had several conversations just about him in the civil rights movement, representing the Wilmington 10 down in North Carolina as an attorney, and then like my journey here, and how I see law as a glass ceiling. It's very jurisdiction based, so I can't practice in states I'm not licensed in. Whereas other modes and mediums I probably could do and not have that type of mind. But him telling me and kind of challenging me to use the degree again to advance the liberation of our people. So he helped to kind of shape, like, you don't need to throw the degree away. You can still do what you want to do and be a lawyer, because we'd rather have you in this position than somebody else, somebody with a consciousness,
Right.
outside of somebody who just wants to sell out your people. So he was another. Professor Green, same way, like a lot of my law school professors. Dean Green was instrumental too in helping to shape the narrative of how I should kind of maneuver through it. Professor Amana, she actually, when she found out that I had did like some film work when I was abroad, because when I was there in South Africa, I took a camera and started interviewing people on the street and just talking about like their experience with apartheid, because we know South Africa to be known for apartheid. So it's like, let me figure out what apartheid is, if you all are still experiencing it, how the country views Nelson Mandela, da da da. So when I came back and I was talking to her just about it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to practice law. Like, I actually enjoy interviewing people and talking to people and all this and that.
Right.
She actually was the one that put me in contact with someone in the industry that was friends with like a major director, and he helped me to maneuver, just through like how to write the treatments, how to do help me with my education on film work and how to like handle that. So she was instrumental in that, but also because her husband is a big civil rights attorney, John Burris in Los Angeles, LA. That she was able to help me balance the two. Like, okay, you want to be a lawyer and you want to do this, I'm gonna help you with both and encourage you with both. So those are like a couple that come to mind when it deals in like navigating that. And then one last person, I would say Mary Wright, Professor Mary Wright. She also was one who literally was like the living embodiment of being a Pan-African and being in this space. Because before, I never really saw it. I never saw a lawyer that who was a Pan-African lawyer that I could kind of touch. You had Chukwueze Lumumba and some others, but that I can kind of like touch and talk to. A lawyer that was in that space that had
As you experience your doubt.
as I experienced that, and as I go through the journey to be able to kind of walk me through it. She was another one like Professor Jordan. I can go into her office and just talk to her and say, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling. You know, like how should I maneuver this? You know, I have this consciousness now about my African identity and what they're doing to our people, and I'm here like feeling like a vanguard for this racist type of system and da 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 da." So there have been many times when I kind of lamented to her, and she, you know, she was just listening. And then she would say, all right, we'll put things in historical context. You always want to put things into historical context in order to articulate your argument. And that's where I got that from. So it was many people on the journey, even now to this day, like Mama Ajwa Ayatoro, I meet with her every month. And we talk about like just my journey and how it could be what things that I've done wrong, things I've done right, how, you know, I am now and what we can do to contribute to just advancing the movement. So it's been a lot of people that I think have helped to shape who I am. But particularly when I came back from the continent and kind of building from that perspective and contextualizing things, I would say those have been some.
The power of mentorship, man. That's a heavy one, because we live in such a society where if you don't get it on your own, you're not respected.
Oh no,
you know. And the thing is, relationships are everything.
Absolutely.
You know, I had a mentor of mine tell me, you know, money is not the most important thing, because what you're going to do with your time, which is most important, and with your relationships, which is secondly most important, will produce organically the money when it comes back. The power of mentorship, but that mindset of, I got to get it. I got to get it, and I got to just grind it out and just kill myself almost trying to get it. The mindset here and the mindset there. Speak to the contrast of understandings there.
I feel like there's a lot of influence of the West there, because there you do see a bit of that where it's like, you know, I gotta grind, I gotta grind, I gotta grind. But I feel like it comes off differently, because it's not just Africa, it's also Central and South America, because those are places I've been to. And you'll find that there is a leisure time with it, and it's not just on the weekends. You know, like there's a time where you may go into a shop and they may be closed, and it might be 7 o'clock. You know, it might be 8 o'clock. You're like, no, we going home. We got a family to feed. We're not 24/7 running, you know, on fumes. And I think there's an appreciation of a softer life, or an appreciation of, you know, being able to take in all this beauty that may be nature, that may be the water, that, you know, may be the animals that we don't necessarily see here, or it's commercialized here or packaged as a commodity here for only the uber wealthy or rich to be able to attain. You know, if you're sitting here and, you know, you're walking in nature or walking by the water, whatever the case may be, you can't do that in the middle of the day if you're working 9 to 5, for the most part. You know, for every average American that's out there, we're not talking about those that are in the top 1%. We're not talking about those that are 6 figures over. We're talking about like the average American person who's working that can barely afford to pay rent. If they have a mortgage, that too, or taking out a whole bunch of credit card debt, stuff like that. If you're working all the time around the clock and you're barely making enough to make your bills, you're not necessarily going to think, oh, I want to be able to just walk. Or excuse me, you're not going to be able to, you know, take advantage of the beauty that's around you, because you can't. You in your mind, you don't have time, because you got to grind, you got to hustle. And then one of the things, being a business attorney, that I've seen too, is a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly in this social media era, have a tendency to overly glorify an entrepreneurial life. And I think that you're just seeing different types of snapshots of that, and you're not getting the full breadth of exactly what that takes. You know, because you can't, you're not going to, everybody is not going to make $100,000 in a month. That's just not about to happen. And I think sometimes you're being sold a dream and in order to maybe get more views or maybe go viral or even get more business instead of being real to the people just about like, no, if you are an entrepreneur, there may be times where you don't know when your check is going to come. Or if you're just starting a business, you may need to keep another 9 to 5 so it can fund the business.
You're
That's
not
how
gonna
most of
get
the businesses
paid
get
for a
funds.
good while.
Exactly. You're not going
Right.
to get paid. It's going to be
Right.
long hours that you have to do,
Right.
stuff like that.
Right.
So with like that grinding thing, I think I've noticed in other countries there's a balance to it. Because even I was in a place like Japan where it was cool to just walk around and see like some of the like how they do technology overall and cleanliness of their streets and things, but also the appreciation for family, and understand that, I have a family to go to. So yeah, we may be working hard, but we got families to go to, be able to chill out with. And you see a lot in the Caribbean too. But I think that here we've been so socialized and really conditioned to think that rest means lazy. And it's like, well, if that was the case, then we must be the most productive people on the face of the earth, because I think that we built a lot of this country not being lazy.
Right, right. Oh man, all right. That's a lot. That's a lot because you're flipping you're flipping a perspective for a lot of people, a way of life, an understanding. A lot of people have had toxic success behind that level of entrepreneurial understanding, right? Chasing and grinding it until it produces, right? No rest, you sleep. And we've developed cultural colloquialisms out of all of it, right? I sleep when I'm dead. That's crazy for me.
It is.
Family members, and every family ain't blood. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
We've developed some crazy ideologies behind this kind of cultural understanding and push to be successful in an environment that's taxing and demanding, and it's always forcing you to level up. It seems like there's no break to it. You always want to get ahead. You always want to get the edge. And, it's like we've lost sight of the true values of life. You said, there's a true appreciation in other areas of our globe. There's a true appreciation of life and the simplicities of it, right? And being able to sit still for a moment to appreciate the things around you, the family around you. It's not to say that people don't have problems. It's just that we're so calm and we have the rest to deal with the things that come. My question is, how have you been able, when you came back, what was it? Was it a cultural shock for you at any point? Because our it seems like from what you're saying, man, our culture here is drastically different, and in some ways, it's harming us. We, like you said, the body keeps score, and even when we're not, and we're being affected behind trying to do the good thing, or what we're considering to be the good thing.
I think that like it's just work, because like even coming when you have that experience like that and then you come back, it's a bit of dare I say like depression that you go through when you experience such a beautiful time being away from the States. And then keep in mind that you're always it's always taught to you that America is like number one. There's nothing better than here. Like everything is great here. If you go outside, like it's not going to be better than here. And there are certain benefits of living in the United States and being an American citizen. However, when you go outside the United States and you experience what life is like, something as basic as the food and what is allowed here versus what's allowed abroad in the food, that can impact and affect your mood, your relationship, your mind, all of that stuff. That's exemplary of like just the distinction and the difference. So for me coming back, it was and always is, because even now, like it always is like dang, I wish I was there longer. I wish I was in a space to where I can still work and make the money from the States.
Right.
Bro, which by the way I plan on doing anyway. But like it's always a longing of that, because again, like you're able to I'll give an example. I went to Colombia recently for my birthday with my fiance. And I was able to we both as both entrepreneurs, we were able to work in that until a certain time, then close the laptop, and then walk out, whether it be to the beach or walk out in town, just chill, vibe, relax, have some fresh juice, all that stuff, and just be present. In the States, there's like this angst to not be present. Like it's just to, okay, what's going on? Like you said, the grind. All right, well, I gotta grind, I gotta hustle, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. We develop these toxic traits to sustain our business and have the money be at the forefront of everything that we do, when that's not what life has to offer. And you see that when you experience other cultures, because even when you see poverty in places, impoverished people, or what we may deem as impoverished people in other places, still are happy.
Living the best life.
Exactly, with no like you got to tell them that you
go
impoverished.
You gotta
Yeah,
eat.
you know what I'm saying? Because they're not looking at it like that, and that may not be. Then that might not be their experience. Like we don't see poverty as money. We see poverty as lack of life. We see y'all as being impoverished. And there was a infamous meme that went around maybe some year, I would say probably like 10, 12 years ago. I remember seeing where it had children that were in, I'm just say Kenya because it looked like Eastern Africa, and then you had kids in the West, right, in the United States. And the kids in the United States would, it had like little bubbles over their heads saying something to the effect of, dang, I feel sorry for those African kids because they got to be in the wilderness and do this and do that and da 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 da, right? And then the bubbles on the heads of the continental African children, it was like, well, I feel sorry for those United States kids because they got to be stuck in the classroom all day. They can't experience, like, go outside and learn and do certain things, and then they have to eat this trash food and da 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 da. So it's just based on perspective. But being in those spaces and amongst those type of people and cultures, it really helps you, well, your culture and your people, it really helps to put things in perspective. Or as my professor said, give it that context that you need, because it's more to life than just working and hustling and then you can die when you dead. What type of, like, that logic just is bad, because like that not only teaches you that you have no value outside of the work you produce, but like you don't have an opportunity to enjoy your life because you got to hustle all the time. And that's stuff that like parents from the previous generation before that did, where they didn't have an opportunity at all to experience life because they were working some jobs that didn't pay enough to just make the bills, in hopes that their children would be able to experience life and those type of things. And when you come from a working class family, or when you have parents that have worked like that, and you see when they're in their 60s, their 70s, or even 50s, and they're unhappy and they haven't lived life, all they know is to work and then come home and rest, maybe watch a American football game from time to time, and that's it. What type of life is that? I don't want to live like that, and I refuse to live like that. I want to enjoy my life continually. I'm not hustling until I die. Like, that's not, I think that's ludicrous. Like, there's more to life than just this grind and this hustle, because it's like you're just getting squeezed all the life out of you, and then what's left? Yeah. What are your kids going to enjoy? I mean, are they going to have time to spend with you, or are you just going to be working all the time?
Am I in therapy, Ken? What are you doing right now?
I'm just saying, brother, that's what it
is. No, man, you're speaking to me, because you're right, man. And you get caught up in trying to bring to life the vision you have, and then you're dealing with how culture has shaped your perspective.
Yeah.
And you feel horrible about not necessarily being able to do what you think you see from other people's routes. When you're not applying real life to it, right? The journey to it, and all of the things that we're kind of articulating now, it's like those things are real for other journeys too. It's just that once it gets to a certain point, that you're seeing the accumulation of a bunch of moments stacked on top of each other, rather than just acting like it was poof, it was there. Right. And the fear behind missing out on something like that, man, produces such a sense of urgency to go harder. And in some cases, do weird stuff like stab your guy in the back, or do some weird, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Hate on the next man, right? Acting like that there's no way that you could be successful in your own route, right? And it's caused such a discontentment amongst our communities. And I was talking to you before we hopped on again, right? But we were talking about how I was telling you how I appreciated, sitting in a meeting with you,
For sure.
eating some good food together, listening to you talk, listening to you, commune with the community, and how energy speaks before the mouth does. So you exuberated such a comfort level amongst the people where, man, here it's like you looking at people with the side eye.
Exactly.
It's like, are you really
Exactly.
for me? It's
Yeah.
like it's that kind of thing. There's such a competitive vibe here.
Yeah.
You know what the difference is there, right? And how that forms unions and agendas and all kinds of other stuff that is produced out of all of that. You're not seeing that in the other areas of this world,
Yeah.
more so on the African continent. Let me ask you this, before we start to dive into some of the things you've been able to get accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you mentioned when you get here, it's like when I got back, it was like depression almost,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I can kind of understand what that is because you're right. Like our vacations are marketed to us, and you can't get it unless you grind.
Exactly.
And it's the
Exactly.
craziest thing, right? And I didn't put it together until you said something. But their life is paradise.
Yeah.
But we're being sold paradise,
Yeah.
and the only way we're going to get it is if we kill ourselves trying to get it. And when we get there, we can half-ass enjoy it because
Teach.
we're
Bring
trying
it
our
back.
best to recover from doing what we did all year to get to what we thought should be really given to us for free.
Teach.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, man, I can completely understand how that looks like coming back, because I hate coming back from vacation, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like coming back to a dungeon with the jail cell
Exactly.
slamming on you,
Exactly.
you know. But how are you able to work yourself out of that, man? And I guess this will help some other guys, because a lot of dudes, man, they don't feel like they deal with depression. They don't feel like they deal with fear. They don't feel like they deal with none of those things. But being in those environments, you don't have the environment to germinate those sorts of things, right? When you're living in paradise,
Yeah.
it's not too many depressions you're going. I'm just thinking about it because, again, I haven't been,
Yeah.
right? But when you're there, you're not thinking that I'm in a depressive state. You're right. They're not looking at it that way. Their perspective is completely different. And because they are taking the time to appreciate life, not to say that they're not doing their thing, they're just staying in their lane and they're accepting the appreciation of life around them and deciding, okay, this is enough work now. How the heck did you come up out of that, man? It takes me a good month
Yeah.
to be okay after vacation.
It took me like what? The first couple of times it took me about 2, 3, 4, half a year to get up out of
Yeah.
that, because it's like you experience dang near nirvana when you're abroad, and you come back and it's like, dang, I gotta go through that. And then you still are daydreaming about or envisioning yourself in these spaces and places. I think that what has helped me is being able to have a circle to cultivate people who have these type of experiences, but at the same time, people who are uh, have the ability to, one, have the experiences, but then two, create like a little small world where you can still have these type of experience, but just locally. So, getting back into the country a couple of years, because my mindset has changed in the past, I would say maybe 5 years. Like when I first started to travel and I would come back, it would oftentimes be very like in this kind of down state, like, damn, I'm trying to get back, da da da. But I would say the shift happened right before the pandemic, because I started to look at ways to, one, repatriate, but then also how I could work from abroad. So I've changed professionally, I've changed my whole practice to where I don't litigate cases anymore, because I want the ability to be flexible and I can travel and stuff like that while still getting the work done for business owners and things and athletes and entertainers. So it's more like transactional stuff now. So that way I can still get it done. I also would have different spaces here where I am, whatever city I'm in, to frequent some places I've been to. So a lot of times when you go abroad, you don't, prior to going abroad, you don't realize culturally how much of a melting pot your city may be until you go abroad and experience certain things. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of like here. So when I first went abroad and I came back, I would look to find restaurants that were like continental African restaurants, Ghanaian restaurants, Kenyan restaurants, stuff like that, and that gives me like a semblance of okay, I'm culture,
Transitioning,
exactly.
right.
And then I just fell in love with the food. I'm like, all right, well, I'm
Right,
gonna keep coming back.
right.
And the same with different events too, because if you party and if you're a partier, or if you're going out generally, there may be certain events or festivals that happen back in those countries that you're in that have some type of sister type of thing here, where you can attend, you can go to. I would look at the embassy websites and then kind of, okay, they got this event going on, let me go amongst, and that still gives me like a tie amongst that type of crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me see what else. So I'll do that. I would also, just like orient my mind to when I'm going to go back again. So if I know that I have a trip and I plan on going to a trip in April, and I always go for my birthday. So my birthday's in July. Every year, I always plan to have something happen around July. So if I don't do anything else for the rest of the year, for July, I'm going somewhere, and I'll start to organize my work and what I do around that. So I know I'm gonna have to work hard up until X amount of time. And then when I travel, it's never for like a week. I don't do any. I think that if you go abroad, and particularly if you're going across the Atlantic, I'm not doing a week. So like at minimum, it would be like 3 weeks that I'm gone, right? And just start doing things like that. So planning it out is helpful too. But to get out of the depressive type of state, I would say really being amongst what that thing is that you might miss. I think that helps with the transition.
Yeah. What I hear you saying is you found a balance.
Yeah.
But you had to have something to ground you.
Yes.
Right. And going there, seeing a different way of life, broadening your perspective, understanding the contrast between life, appreciation of life, and then the appreciation of a culture, hustle and bustle culture. But then being able to find your balance, find your roots, get back grounded, and make your easy transitions have kind of worked for you, which is how anyone would get through any level of, mental hurdles, right? So depression, anger, whatever the case may be. You normally do have to find a grounding, a rooting, right, to be able to get yourself through some stuff like that. And I kind of feel like, first of all, I want to get there. I want to go. I know a lot of people who want to go, and I know we all say this, but I'm kind of feeling like it's a necessity now, because there's a version of life that we're not experiencing, and you're not even considering what it'll do for you. Quick story. We reconnected maybe about 3.5 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Something like that. And you did not push veganism on me, right? You were talking to me about it, right? And it was an invitation to try another level of life,
right?
The way you explained it. And I can hear it now. At first, I didn't know what it was, but I didn't feel judged for the food I was eating.
Right.
When you talk to a lot of vegans, man, and you could probably attest to this.
For sure.
You probably know a few dudes, man, but when you talk to a vegan, it's just something about them. It's just like, I don't want to do it your way.
Exactly.
Because I don't like the fact that you're judging me. I don't like how you're talking at me. And I'm in seeing all my grandmothers, they done made it, 90, 100 years old.
I'll be good.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm good.
So I say all that to say this. There was an appreciation in the way that you expressed another level of life, which I also hear you saying, and the experiences and how you can just be in paradise while you're there. Yeah. And life is a paradise, so you never have to get tired of it. Sure. And, it resonated with me to the point where, I told you, me and my wife, we tried some stuff, we took the whole family, as a matter of fact, and the experiences were not what I thought they would be. But when I ate the food, it tastes so good. That, now don't get me wrong, all vegan food is not good, because I've had some, but it was processed. That's a different story. But we went to a nice spot. It was good food, man. My son had some cauliflower chicken wings. My other son had some calamari, right? My wife had some this a cold Italian cold cut. That we really had some good food, and when we had it, it was like a breath of a breath of fresh air, because we were all, I thought I was going to waste my $180. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought I was going to waste my money. And I thought the kids were going to throw it all away. But first, it was a quiet as we went through the first initial bites, right? And we were just like, I heard Ryan back there licking his fingers.
There it is.
Right? I heard my other son, munching and humming. And then I knew it was good when Jalil started watching his YouTube while he was eating.
You had him sit there.
I knew it was good, but it was a reminder to me that, okay, my mind is still small. It's still westernized, and it's still another level of life, another level of peace that we can get to, because that's an anxiety for me, man. Like a whole family transitioning into veganism. Are they going to like it? How much money am I going to waste? Are we really going to be able to embrace this? But you're expressing, man, how we view life is just not how life really is in some other areas. I felt that to be, so it was a breath of fresh air. It was like, I gotta get out of here, and I gotta go visit some other countries. Not to say I've never been out of the country, but I've never been out of the country trying to go appreciate it. I actually went trying to just go exploit it, right? I'm here, we take a picture, kids, y'all got it. And then when we get there, we're so busy, unpacking, booking excursions, trying our best to get everything in. The vacation becomes work. And then when we come back, we tired from the vacation.
Yes, right.
You never really get a chance to truly appreciate it the way that you expressed it. Right. So let me ask you this: as you transition back here, you're being balanced. You're grounding yourself. There's a totality of Blackness that you're beginning to understand. Right. You're embracing mentorship because you've never been here before. So you have to give way to some other people's perspective.
Right.
And then out of that, you found some doubt, which you were able to kind of overcome. Right. I want to make sure I highlight that, because a lot of people don't understand you can be walked away from your dreams if you're not careful. And being able to kind of be put back into place, the appreciation of mentorship, respecting the minds that have come before you. This last piece, when it comes to the contrast between here and there, the relationship value and how easy it was for you to lean on people that understood a little bit more. Because here, it just kind of feels like we're at each other's necks, and in some weird way, you have this older demographic of people who are starting to get angry that they don't understand the younger demographic of people. And it's like a gatekeeping kind of effect there. And they don't want to let us in. They're borderline angry with us because we've been forced to figure out our own way. And because we've been forced to figure out our own way, we're offended that they won't let us in. So, we start to build our own. And we start to hear terms develop, and we start to hear, the younger, immature forming of ideologies of life, and how, and it's all because we're disconnected.
Right.
Talk to me about what you've witnessed over the years when you're managing these entrepreneurs, and how they approach the business, and how you reroute them back to the appreciation of life in order to be successful.
Sure. Like to that point, something comes to mind with the generational gap. I remember Maya Angelou had a interview that she was on a talk show years ago, early 90s, I think. And they were talking just about that. So that's to show you that it's been going on for a minute. But they were talking just about the divide. And I remember her saying that it's the responsibility of the elders to be able to take accountability for how the generation is. Because if you think about it, who is rearing these kids that you're despising? Who are the ones that are showing them or correcting them, And we get in our own heads and spaces and in our own ways a lot of times where we don't even see the accountability factor. Because if you have kids that's wilding out, who are the parents? Like they didn't come from, they didn't just
Right.
pop up here. Like they came from somewhere and they
Right.
learned this behavior somewhere.
Right.
So who's responsible for making sure that they stand, they're corrected a bit or at least guided? And the pushback against that would be, well, if you try to talk to them, then they're not going to listen. Da 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 da. It's like, okay, well, again, that comes with structure and different like things that are set in place to be able to effectuate that. Because if you really historical context, think about enslavement, then Jim Crow, and segregation, and then a little bit of after segregation, black codes and all that stuff. And then you have like the crack era, right? Black codes may came before the Jim Crow drink, but you have the crack era. So all the while since we've been here, we've been under attack, right? I think that just goes without saying. So during the period of time where you have this generation of youth, who raised them? Was it the mother, the family that was on during the drug epidemic, who lost a whole generation? So these kids were either latchkey kids or they were ones that were raised by the grandparents. We're not talking about people that had parents that died from like natural causes, stuff like that, but just more so are people that succumbed to like the crack epidemic, right? During this time, did a lot of these children get the rearing that was necessary, or was the community in a space and place where you had the village mentality where you would take over? Add into that the flooding of guns into the community, so now you
Yeah.
become more violent, the
Right.
dilapidation of housing and things like
Right.
that,
Yeah.
economic castration, all of that. So it wasn't just one thing that resulted to this. It was like a multiple layered thing, coupled with the fact that the wealth gap is still like expanding. So now you want these kids to just get it out the mud and figure out how to do it because y'all figured out how to do it, and with no guidance and no tools. I mean, that's kind of like expecting your child to always be mild mannered and know the right and get good grades in school without any tutoring or any teaching, anything like that, right? So I want to address that. But I worked briefly with this one former NFL player, and he got in contact with me because he had an issue with his it was like an NIL situation. It wasn't college though, but like his image and what was being used for this nonprofit. And I remember during this conversation that he wasn't privy to just a lot of understanding about how the business works, period. But then as I was informing him just about how to navigate the space of like the nonprofit world, and that somehow we got on to culturally, some things and what we need to have in place just as.
Because it's all, I don't mean to interrupt, but isn't it always, it's never just business. No. There's always another level of life influence in it.
For sure. Like, because you got to be able, even if it's just on a business perspective, you got to be able to resonate with the person too.
Right.
So for me, because I'm coming from a community oriented position off brick, like when I engage with anybody, it's always going to be coming from that type of perspective, no matter if you are in my race, outside of my race, or whatever the case may be. It's always going to come from that. So in dealing with him, that's that's how it came out. Is like, okay, well, you're with this particular company that clearly is taking advantage of you and not showing you not showing you proper respect, and trying to oust you in your own on your own board, where you can take this energy that was put into this organization that doesn't really respect you and put it back into community and organizations that actually would respect you, understand who you are, and protect you in a sense. So that's how it wraps around. So that's one example. But like with the business overall, I always start with asking my clients, well, what's your purpose and why do you want to open a business? Like, why do you want to start a business? What was it? And they typically come with that already, that they know. But then as we're doing like just the discovery call of understanding more about it, the intake, I'm like, okay, so like what's the end goal? Because I rarely get clients that just want the end goal to be money. It's always some type of, and it's not even a nonprofit. Like, it's because nonprofits you would think are the ones that's mission driven and just about doing stuff for the community. But not like the business owners will oftentimes say like, I want to make this impact in my community, or I want to be able to have this as a legacy. And I think because of naturally how I am as a person, that just may attract those type of clients. But that's the way I've used it, is one, by through social media and things I do, you see it. But then also when I'm engaging and speaking with you, I'm literally excited for your journey and figuring out how best to ensure that you expand and grow while still respecting who you are as your individual and honoring yourself in the process.
Yeah. And I hear that in you too, because, you exuberate the appreciation. And I guess I'm just kind of hearing it, and it's kind of coming full circle because you've done a lot here, right? And you can kind of hear how your experiences have shaped and positioned you to accomplish everything you've accomplished, right? And as I hear you speak, I'm jotting down the, possible titles for this episode, right? Because I think we're discussing a broad scope of things, but they're all impacting the very same narrow mission that you're on, right? And how all of it has a point, and there's even the smallest of detail mean the most here. I'm pretty sure you discussed, and the way that you provided an example of, I work. I shut that laptop down. Me and my wifey, we go to the beach and we stroll, we drink some juice, right? That kind of thing. It's those smaller experiences and appreciations of life that you only get if you go there, find out the contrast of our cultures, come back, feel depressed, like this is some BS, right? And you're like, I got to figure out how to be here, right? And then you're doing what you did there, or what you saw people do there here, and you're just figuring out how to do it here. And now that you've been able to get it done and do it here, now you can calmly, through the mentorship of others and the guidance of others, you can calmly be able to do it for other people's visions too. I'm starting to hear you, and I'm starting to see how it all formed and how it all cultivated to where you are right now. And I guess I'm just, like I said, I'm appreciating it because, from afar, you've done some great things, right? And when you get a chance to read it all, I'm saying to myself, like, my God.
I'm saying the same thing. When I have time to do this.
There's one here. Just to narrow it a little bit, because you've done more than enough to talk about for about 4 or 5 hours, right? But there's one here I wanted to concentrate on, which was you kind of caring about folks that have felt like they've made a decision to take themselves out of, freedom. And then as they reintroduce themselves into our societies, you care about that transition, and I think that's an admirable thing, because in your background, I don't see it as you speak it, but there's still a passion in your heart for focusing on community development and reentry of persons formerly incarcerated in Baltimore, Maryland. And this is through the Tubman House. Now, how did that come about?
That one was interesting. So that's Brother Eddie and Sister Dominique Conway. So back in 2014, I saw a flyer that had, because at this point I've already traveled to the continent once. I think was that fall? I think it may have been twice. And I was attempting to figure out like how I can implement what I saw here, but really be an activist while I'm in school, because it provides you a buffer zone of, like, you're not a professional yet, but at the same time, you're not a kid, so you're in this space where you can still organize and not really have to worry about much. So I saw a flyer of him and Lil Boosie, or like a meme or something on social media. And it had, because they both were released on the same day. And Brother Eddie served like 44 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. He maintained his innocence on. And then Boosie on the other side. So it was like, how many people are celebrating this, talking about Boosie, but not knowing who this man is, talking about Brother Eddie, right? So he was a Black Panther. So for me, I'm like, yo, this is something I want to know more about. I've heard about the Black Panther Party. Like, this is really dope. So he came down to Durham to do a local talk. And I showed up, me and a couple of people friends in law school. We showed up to this event. And at the end of it, I remember telling him, like, yeah, I'd like to work with you. I'm in law school right now. Da, da, da. I'm from Maryland. And he was like, okay, so when you graduate, what did he say? When I pass, either when I pass the bar or graduate, I forget which one. He said, when you graduate, come up and we can put you to work. I'm like, okay. So he had another event where I communicated with both of them, Sister Dominic and Brother Eddie, and they came back down to North Carolina. No, it might have been actually, was it the same weekend? It's either the same weekend or it happened another time where they came down, and then they spoke at a cultural center that my spiritual uncle ran, and still got to build and everything. I brought more law students out to hear him speak and stuff. So I get back to Maryland. This was February. No, I'm sorry. This was May 2015, and study for the bar and everything. Take the bar at the end of July. Then I traveled to Kenya and Tanzania. They put me in contact with MZ Pete and Mama C, the O'Neills that were exiled from the States and they landed in Tanzania and they've been there since the 70s. Um, which is a whole another story within itself. It's amazing. But so I met them out there and hung with them and then came back. And when I got back, that's when I went up to see Brother Eddie and them. And he literally was like, we met at, I forget what area it was. We met at some area and he was doing work already outside. Now, mind you, this is like, at this point, he's what, 70? He's in the 70s, I think. And he said, all right, well, here you go. He gave me a shovel and literally put me to work that same day, right? So I'm like, oh my
It's
God.
not what I expected.
It's not what I expected at all. So I'm like, okay. So as we're organized and I'm learning more about him and I'm moving and sitting at his feet, because that's really big for me, sitting at the feet of elders and taking in all this wisdom and knowledge. He's introducing me to his comrades and stuff. And at that point, Sister Dominique, Brother Eddie, and some of the brothers that were uh, inside the prisons created like the Tubman House. We all kind of did it. And the Tubman House was focused on bridging the gap between those that were incarcerated and then those that were on the outside. So we wanted to do like food sovereignty. So we had like the farming that we did. We did political education. And that was one of my favorite ones because that's the time that we can hear Brother Eddie tell his stories about, being locked down prior to him getting locked down, and what that was like for him on the outside in Baltimore. And then like the experiences he got building with different coalitions from around the world. And that was my first opportunity outside of me traveling to Africa. Like that was my first opportunity really being politicized on an international level. So that's where later on you see the United Nations stuff comes in because of like that type of background that I started to develop then.
Yeah.
But
let me just pause there.
Okay.
So that kind of work, that's humility work. Humility work produced greatness in it. Like the humility work was the initiation of the other things that come. Right. So I've did an episode a while back. We talked about down is the way up. Right. This is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Because that's the planting. Right. You let the soil do what they got to do to the seed burst, traumatic experience, back and forth. Right. Boom. All of a sudden, people see the up growth of the plant. Right, but they don't understand how the rooted systems had to grow down first in order for you to come back up. That's eye opening for your journey as well. But continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I like that. I like that analogy too because with the Tubman House when we started, and at no point in time was I like, I gotta do this stuff. Like for me, like I said before, any way that my people need for me to be able to advance the liberation movement, I'm gonna avail myself to it. So even then, when we were working at the Tubman House, we literally attempted to negotiate a building with the city because it was an abandoned row home. They refused to give it to us. And then we even offered some money to buy it. They refused to give it to us. So we had different means to acquire the property. And so we acquired it. And, did essentially what the Europeans did when they first came to America. So that's when Baltimore City popped up on us and was talking about, oh, we shouldn't be here, all this and that. But at that time, we already had the news because we had the press conference out there. So we told them what we were doing. And they tried to press us out with that. And then we ended up negotiating a trailer with them and having that on the land. But that was a great experience because one, I'm fresh out of law school too, just got my law degree. I ain't
Right.
really realizing. Well, I mean, I knew the significance of what we were doing, but at the same time, I'm like, this is for the community, this is for the people, and I don't see anything wrong with what it is that we were doing. But it was a great time for that. But also seeing everybody buy in that's in the community, because we didn't come in like how you see charities do, where you come in and you impose yourself on them. It's more so now we're going to have people in the community on our board. We're going to have input from the community. Let us know, what do you want here? We're working with you. Even some of the brothers that was on the block, like we were letting them know, like, yeah, is this cool that we can do this? So essentially getting permission from them to be able to come in. So that we're an extension of you. We're not coming in trying to move you, right? So that work really did help lay the foundation for all the other work that I've done outside of that. Because anytime, whether it be I had my own organization or I was working in another space, I was always able to refer back to the Tubman House, because that's like true, thorough organizers from like the Black Panther Party perspective and others, to lay great foundation as to how to move and maneuver. And I use that in the various organizations, and even with regard to my own businesses, like just how structured we were and how organized we were with all of that, and how it was like horizontal leadership. So it wasn't like this hierarchical type of thing, and that was really in place. Like if somebody were to be killed, then you can step right in. It wouldn't be that big of an issue because everybody knew. But that Tubman House experience was definitely a great one.
You just seeing the need.
Yeah.
Just coming in and serving.
Exactly.
Service, man.
Yeah.
Serve, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do everything through others, man. Man, I tell you what, man, Taalib, man, it's been a pleasure having you on, having this conversation. And I respect your body of work. And I'm excited for you too, because you're still young.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, you still got a lot of energy to get it done. And you have an understanding on how to balance yourself, how to do more, doing less, how to accomplish more, doing less, because your intentionality and focus on what your mission is, knowing who you are, you're not being swayed from the left or the right. You are unapologetically, but also to your core you, and you are all right with it. Right? You're not fighting with yourself. You ain't arguing with yourself. You know what makes you tick. You know what makes your triggers go. Right? And you gravitate to like-minded individuals, people need your service, and you do not have a problem getting your hands dirty. But you always, after your hands are dirty, sit back and appreciate the earth that's on them, as opposed to washing it off and acting like it's just dirt. I'm gonna tell you, man, I appreciate you, King.
Likewise,
thank you for joining me. Again, listen, I want everyone to hear it from you. Tell everybody how they can tap in with your business, tap in with your work, just get involved in any way that they can with it.
For sure. Like, you can definitely check out my website, the law firm, thesaberfirm.com. On social media, IG is the Saber Firm, LinkedIn, Taalib Saber. Real talk, you can just type my name in the Google, and this ain't even like
not too many people can say that.
You can type my name in Google and you'll find like all of the stuff, but most of the stuff is my name, Taalib Saber. So
yeah. Well, listen, dope, man. Check him out. If you need his services, look him up. He's gonna do some great work for you, and he's gonna serve your needs. He's not gonna talk to you and buy into things that you're not. But he is going to help you reconnect with who you really are, so that you can really get your impact done and accomplished. So I appreciate you, King. Thank you for coming through and joining me on the Ryan Dunstan podcast. And these are Words from Humble King. See y'all next time. Peace.